It's kind of funny with these songs. Have you ever just had something kind of on your mind and you're not really thinking about it, but it's just kind of under the surface? I realized this morning that two of these songs in the garden we played at my mom's funeral, and one of this last song, when I found out she had passed, I was at a Toby Mac and Crowder concert, and this song was playing when I got the call from my sister. Why am I thinking about this? I didn't realize this week is the year anniversary of her death, and so it's kind of like, even though it wasn't in the front of my head, all this stuff was kind of. It's been an interesting year. We're going to be kind of changing gears in our walk in recovery, our walk of kind of getting to a healthier place. We've been talking all the way up until now about a relationship with Christ. And just to sum up the last 6 weeks, without Christ, you can't be in a healthier place. It's just true. I've talked a lot about this. I'm not going to recap the last 6 weeks, but the reality is, you can do things to make your life better, or you can do things to try to make yourself in a healthier place. But if you try to do it outside of a relationship with Christ, everything that we build, it's kind of like building your house, on a rock. If you try to self-help your way into a healthier place without Christ, it's like building your house on the sand. It might look pretty and it might work for a while, but when the storm comes, guess what? The house on the sand, it washes away. When we have a relationship with Christ, and Christ is in the center of our wanting, our needing to be in a healthier place, Christ is building our house on the rock. So that when the storm comes and the wind comes and the rain comes and all this stuff comes, the house built on a rock stands. And that's why it's so important that Christ is in the center of our walk to being in a healthier place. The word sponsor, this is not an acrostic. This PowerPoint, it's primarily about sponsors, and I'm going to talk about what that is in recovery world, and I'm going to kind of tweak this a little bit to our own context just a little bit, because this isn't a formal recovery group that we have. This is just something that we're talking about. A sponsor is somebody that not only is your relationship with Christ important, you have to have a relationship with other people. And it's always good, especially if you have a connection with another believer who you can share your stuff with. So you could use this word sponsor, you could use the word friend, but we're going to kind of frame what this friendship would look like. Somebody who is a sponsor is somebody, in an official context of recovery, somebody who's gone through the entire process themselves, the whole 12 steps, the 8 principles, and they kind of help people along through the process as well. And they have these things called accountability partners. Accountability partners, it's not necessarily somebody who's been through the process, but it's somebody that you're going through the process together with. You might be in kind of the same place. But the reality is whether this relationship or this friendship or the sponsor, whatever you want to call it, whatever this relationship it is, it has to be somebody that you can connect with and trust, because God needs to be the foundation of our recovery. He has to be the foundation of us being in a healthier place. But the reality is we also need people. And this is something that, especially, I'm somebody who's not normally. I'm not a super social person. I have close circles, but it's just like there have been times in my life, not now, but there have been times in my life where I've been almost kind of a reclusive type thing, because sometimes, especially if you're living in a hard place, sometimes it's easier just to kind of almost like sulk or the withdrawal, or sometimes that's just, for many people, it's even their personality, just to want to be reclusive. The problem is that's kind of not the way we're designed. That's not the way that this works. It's the reason we have church. It's the reason why Paul tells us not to forsake the assembling of God's people. It's because we are built to be in communion. And if you think about it, this is a God thing. We talk about the Godhead. What is the Godhead? The Godhead is the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Do you realize that even God himself communes? He has connections, within the Godhead, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, that they're like one. They're so perfectly unified, they're like one. Even though they're three separate entities, that they are so perfectly unified. You even see these conversations in Genesis. Let us make man in our image. They said, let us make man in our image. So we see this connection even within the Godhead. When Jesus was here, he made it very clear that the Father was the man. Jesus, who was the creator of everything that was ever created, according to John, still was saying the Father's the man. So this connection, it's important. We see that their connection with Christ is so important. We learn that he's, apart from him, we can do nothing. He says that. But this connection with people is also important. And we're going to talk about why this is. So a sponsor in the recovery context is somebody who's been through the process again. They're helping you along. Kind of an accountability person is somebody you can share with and be with and kind of walk this walk with you. And this is very important in the process. So let's look. We are now in principle 4. Openly examine and confess my faults to myself, to God, and to someone I trust. One of the most important things in becoming in a healthier place in our lives is honesty. We have to be open and we have to be honest to ourselves. And we're going to be talking over the next 3 weeks about inventories, inventorying our lives, inventorying our spiritual walks. Really kind of like breaking it down and looking at ourselves in an honest way. But we have to have this, in this relationship, this friendship, this accountability relationship, we have to be not only honest with ourselves and with God, we need to be honest with our friend. Because when you hold things back, you don't find healing. James tells us to confess our sins one to another that we might be healed. So, what does that mean? What does that entail? It doesn't require, and I talked about this in Sunday school, I've literally seen this. There was this relationship that these people had inside of a church. They had cheated, they were married, they cheated, both cheated, and they were told that they had to come up in front of the church and confess their sin to the entire church. And it's just like, why does that even make any sense? That's just kind of destructive. That's kind of like, Hawthorne's The Scarlet Letter. We're not here as a church to put scarlet A's on people's chests and let them walk around in shame. This confession doesn't have to be, to the church. But again, this relationship, this friendship that we form, we have to find somebody we can be honest with, because all the stuff that we've been tucking down for all these years, it's not going to come up. You can't deal with it. It can't be healed until you let that thing out. James wasn't kidding. We do need to confess these things to find healing. There is healing in the release. And we're going to talk about that more over the next several weeks. But this principle 4, we have to really examine ourselves, and we have to confess our faults and be honest with God and ourselves and someone we trust. Matthew 5:8 says, "Happy are the pure in heart." How do you become pure in heart? You get healing from the things that are there. The issues that you have, it kind of bubbles up through this recovery process. Have you ever seen how they refine gold? The recovery is kind of like gold, with the refining process of gold. Gold, you heat it up, and it just almost like it boils, and all the stuff kind of comes up to the top, and they scoop the impurities off the top. They do it again. They do this over and over again. So how do we become pure in heart? As we go through the fire, and we're being honest with ourselves and God and others. We take that stuff and we slough it off the top so that we find more purity in our heart. The step, we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Boy, I'm getting ahead of myself here. There we are. We made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves, and the passage was in Lamentations 3:40. Let us examine our ways and test them, and let us return to the Lord. And again, the next 3 weeks, we're going to be talking a lot about examining ourselves. We're going to be talking about things about being honest with ourselves. We're going to be talking about our character. We're going to be talking about integrity. We're going to be talking about sin. And these are all things where we have to be super honest with ourselves. So why do I need a sponsor? Why do I need, and again, we can use the word friend if you're uncomfortable with sponsor. Why do I need a friend? Why do I need a sponsor? Why do I need someone in my life to share this stuff with? The Bible tells us that two are better off than one because together they can work more effectively. If one of them falls down, the other can help him up. But if someone is alone, there is no one to help him up. Two people can resist an attack that would defeat one person alone. So why do we need a friend? Why do we need a sponsor? Why do we need an accountability person? They are our support system. We need a support system. You need a safety net. You know, even this thing about the attack, when two people can resist an attack better than one. I'm telling you, while you are trying to get in a healthier place, the devil is going to attack you. He is. He doesn't want to see you in a healthier place. He wants to throw everything at you but the kitchen sink. But when you have a friend that you can weather this storm together, you can fend off the attack that much better. You know, I'll never forget there was one time the Hanley was playing Jefferson. Jefferson's a rough bunch. This is back before Jefferson County. Jefferson and Washington, the two schools divided. It used to be one school was Jefferson. And I know even when I played football in Martinsburg, it's just like there was always fights at Jefferson games. I mean, they were just a rough bunch. I mean, they just were. I mean, it's just, so Hanley was playing Jefferson. I was a school resource officer. The other school resource officer from another school, he was there with me. And the Jefferson crowd had gotten so crazy. I mean, they were like fighting with each other. I mean, I'd never seen anything like this. So at the end of the game, the Jefferson crowd is coming down into the basketball court. And actually, some of the Hanley people were yelling at the other Jefferson people because they were fighting. And I mean, all this was coming into the basketball court. Fortunately, nothing bad happened. But Paul McFarland and I, this guy makes me look small. I mean, he's like really tall. He looks like a refrigerator with arms. I mean, he was just a big dude. I mean, we stood in the middle of that basketball court with our PR-24s back to back. I mean, we could feel each other's back because it didn't matter what was going to be coming at us. We were going to fight it off together. You know, if it didn't matter what happened. And again, fortunately, nothing bad happened. But if it really broke bad, there were two people that were getting out of there in one piece, and it was me and Paul McFarland. You know why? Because we were ready to fend off the attack together. And I'll tell you, there's such great value in that. If I was in that same situation, and I've been in that similar situation. One time there was this somebody got shot down on the block. And I was down there, and fortunately another person did get there very quickly. But there was just pandemonium. People were like, the guy was on the ground, he had been shot, and they were like pulling his socks off, and you know, because that's what they do. They would hold drugs, they would hold money in there. And there was like people, and it's just like, if I was there alone, I would be in trouble. Because I was outnumbered, I was outstrengthed, I was out everything. But when Bozabin showed up, I knew things were going to be much better. We were now going to be able to get out of this thing in a much better shape. In fact, that's before I had a PR-24. That old boy, this is why I started carrying one. He pulled that thing out. he's swinging that thing and people are backing up. It's like, man, I need me one of those. But I'll tell you what, it's we cannot get through the battles in life by ourselves. You can't, because you're going to get knocked down. You may get knocked down anyway, but we need other people so they can help us back up. You can't be an island. You can't be an island in your walk. You can't be an island in your life. You can try, but I'll tell you, I can assure you, it's like building that house on the sand. We need each other. We just do. And we need that relationship with someone that we can be honest with each other, where we can share stuff with each other and not worry about being judged. And also Proverbs 27:17 is iron sharpens iron, one person sharpens another. So we make each other better. We make each other better in a relationship. But here's I kind of have my own little rules that I've learned over the years when it comes to these relationships, these accountability relationships. And one of them is, even if your friend or your accountability person, your sponsor, again, whatever you want to name this person, even if they're not in this church, they should be a believer. Why is that important? Why should the person you're closest to also be a believer? The Bible does ask us, what fellowship does light have with darkness? Why is that a thing? Because you need somebody who supports you in a way that's helpful. If I am looking for my support from someone who does not value a relationship with Christ, it's going to fall short. If I'm looking for this accountability relationship or this friendship, this intimate relationship with somebody who won't be pointing me back to Jesus when I need to be pointed to Jesus, then it's not going to work. You might have a good friend, but you're not going to have a good accountability relationship. It needs to be a believer. Because they also understand your struggles. They understand the things that you go through. I've always said that accountability relationships should be same gender. Why is that? Guys get guys. Gals get gals. They just do. Men and women think differently. They think differently. They process things differently. There was this book that says, the title of it was something along the lines of men are waffles and women are spaghetti, or it's kind of the other way around. What is this it's saying? Even just in the way we think, women, everything's connected. Everything is tied together with everything else. And guys, we like to think things in compartmentalized ways. The waffles, the little squares. So even the way we think is differently. And that's true. I'll have to admit, I like to deal with things one thing at a time because I live in my little box. I don't multitask well, even, on anything, just because I can't connect all of these things at one time. Women have no problem with that. Women can like cook, have a conversation, hold a baby at the same time. I just I can't do it. So, what is my point? It's just people who are sharing in this intimate way, to helping one another. You should understand the way each other thinks. You should understand that, in this relationship, having the same relationship with Christ, you should understand the same struggles. And also, to be honest, whenever you have men and women sharing in kind of an intimate relationship, even if it's not sexual in the beginning, you will cross that line at some point. Because when men and women, and married people, listen to what I'm saying, especially you married people. If you have a friend of the opposite gender, and your sharing gets deeper and deeper and deeper, you're going to start to have feelings you don't need to have. You're going to start having feelings you should not have. Because intimate sharing leads to emotional connections. So what happens when you have opposite gender relationships like that, bad things can happen. Even single people. My first recovery, I was talking about this in Sunday school. I had the first Celebrate Recovery that I had started. There was this guy and this gal. They both had been through the process. You know, they've been dealing with this stuff for a while, but they decided to be each other's sponsor. I'm like, guys, this is a shipwreck waiting to happen. I said, because right now you're both hurting, especially. That's like the double whammy when you're both hurting. I said, what's going to happen is just what I just told you. I said, you're all going to start having feelings for each other. You're right. To have a healthy relationship, both sides should be healthy. If you have an unhealthy and a healthy, this type of relationship, things go wrong. And I said, you're all going to start having feelings for one another. You're all going to start hooking up, and bad things are going to happen. And guess what happened? They did. They didn't listen to Greg. Nobody listened to Greg. Well, they didn't. People do actually listen. They didn't listen to Greg. They got together as sponsors. They were married within a couple of months. They were divorced within 6 months. It was a train wreck you could see coming from far, far away. So that's something, you don't have to worry about that entanglement. When you have same gender relationships of accountability like that. Dudes find a dude. Girls find a girl. You will sharpen each other. You will make each other better when you share in these ways. And what type of qualities should this person have? That this person you're seeking to have this accountability type relationship. What kind of qualities should they have? Maturity is always a good one. You want to connect with people who are mature, but you also, we were talking about this also in Sunday school. It is so important that you find somebody who is not judgmental. Somebody who you can tell your darkest secret to at some point and not worry that they're going to say, you dummy, what were you thinking? Or because of what they're telling you, offends you in such a way that you just kind of let something come out of your mouth that you regret later. Because I can assure you, when you are sharing with an accountability person, if you're sharing with a friend and something judgmental comes out of your mouth, you are shutting doors. Because if now all of a sudden we've had this relationship for 6 months of a year and I feel safe with you enough to tell you something that I've not told anybody else, and you tell me I was stupid, or you say, how could that happen? I would never do that. What were you thinking? What was wrong with you? All those things. Guess what? I will never feel safe to tell you anything else again. You need to find somebody who can speak to you in a non-judgmental way. Someone who can listen to you. Listening is huge. There's a difference between hearing somebody and listening to somebody. Now, I'm sure Sue's listening on YouTube, and I'm going to get in trouble right now. But this is something I'm guilty of. Because, and again, I just admit it, I can't multitask. So if I'm doing one thing and you're talking to me about something else, I might be hearing the words, but it's not soaking in. I might be hearing what she's saying or somebody's saying, but it's not true listening until I've dedicated my time to just that thing, just to hear, just to listen to what's being said. You need to find somebody who's willing to carve some time out of their day just to listen to you. And I'll tell you what really gets me in trouble. And I'm guilty of this. I'm guilty of this. She'll give me the test. Well, what did I just say? I should be smart enough now just to say, I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. But no, I try to grasp for that straw. What you said? I said that 5 minutes ago. It's oh my goodness, I am in so much trouble. Never ever. And again, that wasn't honest of me. When I do that, that's not honest to say, to try to throw something out there. You want somebody who's non-judgmental, somebody who listens to you, somebody who gives you the time of day. Time is a huge thing. I would recommend one of the best ways to establish this relationship, and I'm already talking a few slides ahead, but that's okay. We'll just skip that slide. Ask somebody out to lunch. Can we go to lunch? Go to lunch. Go to the Cracker Barrel. Go to the IHOP. Go to wherever it is that you like eating. Spend half an hour, 45 minutes eating. You realize there was a lot of dinner conversation going on. You know, Jesus loved to eat, it seemed. There was a lot of at the table kind of connections that Jesus had. And, you know, there's a reason why. So have somebody. Can we go to lunch? If the person that while you're out, if they're not listening to you, don't ask that person out to lunch again. Ask somebody else. Say, hey, let's go to lunch. You know, go to lunch. If that person seems genuinely interested in what you have to say, hey, can we go to lunch? Can we do this? You know, every week, every other week. You know, whatever the case may be, these relationships can form naturally. You know, just by spending time with one another. You know, over a piece of cake or, for me, a piece of catfish or salmon. You know, that's, or you can just point blank ask, hey, do you ever have time, can we sit and talk? You know, and ask, don't be afraid to ask for that. Because if you don't ask for that time, guess what? You ain't getting that time. So we need to look for these qualities in somebody and reach out and make that connection. And ask the Holy Spirit. Here's something everybody seems to miss. Ask the Holy Spirit, God, send somebody in my life. God, reveal to me the person that I can be safe with. Always keep God in the front of this recovery journey. Always keep God in the front of this journey to be healthier. Ask Him even, God, help me find a person I can share my life with in this way. Somebody who'll just share a pizza with me and listen to what I have to say. So the qualities, again, honesty. They have to be honest with you. My tendency would be, a human tendency would be to find somebody who's going to reinforce my dysfunctional thinking, even if it's something that it isn't necessarily right. And we might want to gravitate towards people who will pat us on the back for doing wrong things. We need somebody who's honest with us, somebody who listens to us, somebody who's walking the walk. The good advice lies deep within the counselor's heart. The wise man will draw it out. Somebody who has the ability to just, by the way, that's Proverbs 25. We just need to find somebody who can find the best in us. Somebody who understands us. And again, who's not judgmental. And I gave this same advice in Sunday school. I'm going to give it now because it's important. If you are in an accountability relationship with somebody, or if you are in a friendship with someone where you're learning to trust one another, and you're learning to share with one another, and you're learning to unlock those deep things that you've been keeping hidden for so long, to get them out, to be able to share them so that you can find healing for these things. If you're in that relationship and somebody shares something with you that it offends you or something that shocks you, keep your mouth shut. And I mentioned this earlier, but I really need to drive this point home. I'm not telling you to reinforce any bad thing. What I'm telling you is sometimes when somebody says something that shocks you, it's best to keep your mouth shut so you keep the door open. Because I can tell you, I've had people share things with me that would make my jaw drop. And I'm not saying this in an ugly way. I've had people lay things on me that just like, I was like, if my facial expression matched what I was thinking, there would be problems. Because I'd be like, oh my goodness, you did that? Or oh my goodness, oh Lord, I can't be your friend anymore. You know, it's just like when people start laying the deep stuff on you, and you have to be able to keep your mouth shut and not be judgmental in any way. You need to learn empathy. You know, I'm not talking. You don't need to pity anybody. You don't have to feel sorry for them in their situation. But you need to try to understand that you've not been where they've been. You've not done what they've done. You've not had happen to you what's happened to them in the same sequence of events. None of us have walked the same road. So I can assure you, it is easy for somebody, especially been serving the Lord for a long time, that really starting to think highly of ourselves, because we do so good at this Christian thing. It's so easy sometimes to be self-righteous. It is sometimes so easy to point that little crooked finger of judgment. You can't do that in a friendship. You can't do that in an accountability relationship. You know what Jesus did? Think about this for a second with Jesus. Jesus was fully God, fully man, fully God. He was part of the Godhead that says, "Be holy because I'm holy." You know, he was part of the process of making the rules of how to be cleansed from sin. But this is the same Jesus who came and ate meals with sinners. If I was as holy as Jesus, how could I imagine wanting to hang out with me? If someone was holy as Jesus, why would they want to hang out with me? So if Jesus can put aside his own holiness, and his holiness was real, it was his own holiness. If he could put it aside to be a friend to sinners, we need to too. We need to too. You know, the big difference in here is Jesus, who is God, was able to put aside his holiness to hang with us and to be with us and to love with us. Now, for me, who I'm not better than anybody else in this world, shouldn't it be easier for me just to keep my mouth shut and not be judgmental? Let me tell you what, the church, it was once said that that one of the biggest things that convince people to be atheists are the church. Why is that? Because sometimes we don't act the way Christ acts. Sometimes we are judgmental when we shouldn't be. Sometimes we're hard when we shouldn't be. Sometimes we're really train wrecks sometimes. So it is so important to understand that when this person is laying this thing on you, you might not be able to imagine in your wildest imagination that you would do those same things. But let me tell you what, you just may put in the same situation. Love on them. That's what Jesus did. When people came to Jesus, he didn't condemn them. He loved on them. Think about the woman found in sin. You know, they were trying to trap Jesus. They wanted to find a reason to kill Jesus. So they find a woman in sin. They bring her to him, and it's just like, you know what the law says. Got to stone her. She was found in sin. You know, she was found, in this relationship that's against the law. Did he show her judgment? He gets down on his knee and writes something in the sand. We don't know what it was. I got a sneaky suspicion he was writing people's sins in the sand right in front of them. We don't know that, but something got their attention. And he says, he who be without sin, you cast the first stone. Guess what they all did? They dropped their stones and they walked away. Jesus loved. He didn't beat anybody up. He loved them. And that's what we need to do as friends. That's what we need to do when we're in relationships of accountability with one another. And what is the role? The role is to be present. The role is to be there. The role, again, is to be honest, non-judgmental. All this stuff is ties together. Your role is to be a good friend. We're all up in enough years to know what it takes to be a good friend. Honesty, love, presence. I could go through a whole list of things they say the role of a sponsor is, or the role of an accountability person is. Presence, honesty, and love. That's what it boils down to. And we've talked about this. How do you find an accountability person, and the difference between accountability partners and sponsors? Accountability partners are doing just that. They're not like a mentor. That would be, a sponsor would be kind of like a mentor. An accountability partner would be somebody just like that friend in the trenches with you. I would encourage you, church. It doesn't matter where you are in your life. It doesn't matter what your struggle is. It doesn't matter where you are in your relationship with Christ and with others. You need somebody. You know, Jesus, fully God, fully man. He often went off by himself to be with his Father. Why? Because he needed his Father. He needed that connection. Even amongst his disciples, he still had three he seemed to be closest to more than anybody else. He loved all of them, but there were three that seemed like they were with him all the time. It was what I would call his inner circle. So even Jesus had especially intimate connections with three people. He loved all 12, but there were three that he even had that special connection with. He was connected to his Father. He was connected to his friends, who were also his students, his disciples. If Jesus needed the Father and Jesus needed friends, you think maybe you do too? I encourage you to find that person. Find that person. You were designed to be in communion with other people. It's the whole principle behind the way the church works. The writer of Proverbs talks about it. You really do need someone.